Hello everybody, welcome to this drafting analysis on a Vionnet dress. Hello Kassan. Hello Patty. I'm just gonna hold on a few minutes, let you all join. Today I'm actually gonna look at a design not from the Vionnet book but from the Chicago Museum of History, I think. They've got a nice archive as well, so you can have a look at that at some point. And before we get started, if you're on my Patreon, I uploaded both a drafting tutorial and the analysis for the Go Day dress. So if you've missed it, have a look. It's a really nice dress. I quite fancy it for myself. But then my list grows ever longer. Have you been making anything nice today? It's sort of hard getting enough time to actually make stuff, because I love drafting, and it's my job. So I think, like most other pattern cutter or makers, I hardly get time to make anything for myself. Okay, so let's have a look at this dress. So hello everybody. So this dress, most of you loved it, and I put a poll out the other day. I'm going to zoom out again. It's from the 30s. It's made in a silk crepe de chine, and it's very clever, I think, because all the volume and drapes, it looks really complicated. So it's got lots of volume at the bottom, at the front. It's got a cowl neck. I'm not going to do the top, I'm going to draw it for you, but I'm going to concentrate on the construction on the bottom, because I thought that was really fascinating as soon as I saw it. So this is the back view. So you can see it's got a twist at the top, and then it's got an insert which is sort of a diamond shape, and then this is the skirt. Let's see if we can get a full view of the back. So this is the whole back. So you can see she's created some fitting at the top through a twist, because she didn't do darts or anything, Madeleine Vionnet. She's done some darting, I apologise, but most of her shaping is done through twisting, through cutting. Oh, hello Andrea, how are you? So I'm talking today about this really nice, it is bias cut. It's a 1930s Madeleine Vionnet dress, so it is what she's really famous for. But what I love about it, in a lot of pattern cutting books, if you see bias cut, it's always that typical. I'm gonna do a quick sketch. When you see a bias cut dress, it's thin straps, then it's a V-neck, and then it's a sort of slinky dress, and then it might have one seam there, so it might look something like that, and that's really beautiful. And Holston is a fantastic one like that. But what I love about Vionnet, that everything is bias cut, but she doesn't do it as you expect it to do, by the way. You just do a normal, so this would be just a normal straight dress or flared dress, and then you just twist your fabric on bias, and because you don't want to have seams on the bias, you just move all your seams at 45 degrees. So it's really clever, it's really pretty, it's very simple, it's very much it's very 90s as well, so it's very much out there at the moment as well. But what I love about this dress is that it's a bit cleverer. So for those of you who's just joined, it's the 1930s bias cut dress, and I'm now going to have a look how it's constructed. And I've just seen Yolanda has joined me, hello, and also Vahidi, hello, how are you all? So let's get this. I'm going to draw the whole dress, but then I'm going to actually because I had half an hour just now. So I actually had a little bit of a play around with how it's actually made. So it's by Vionnet, and I've got lovely new pens. Thanks to recommendation by one of you. So I'm very grateful because they're much nicer than Sharpie pens. So I'm going to draw the front first. And it's got, the photos aren't fantastic. This is where you can always see it's couture because it's sort of, it is really made for one person, I think. The armhole, so on the mannequin it doesn't always fit perfectly. So the front looks like this, then it's got, this is the side, it's probably a bit more fitted. And then it's actually got a straight seam there. So I think the top might actually be cut on the straight. And then it's got this sort of really nice cowl neck. And that just means that I've actually got a tutorial on YouTube, I think, if you are interested in making a cowl neck. But all you do is when you're front, you just extend it out at the center front and from the shoulders, and you just add volume that way. So you could do it either on bias or on the straight, it would work well. And she's all done in a really beautiful silk crepe. And then it gets really interesting because can you see on the side seam there's these little triangles, and there's actually a close-up I'm going to show you. Yeah. So can you, oh sorry, it's always with the internet. There you go. This is the front, and can you see there's these little triangles, 2 triangles coming from the back to the front, and that gives you an indication on how it's constructed already. And then if you go back to the whole dress, so these are the little triangles, and then it's sort of, there's actually a lot of volume, but because it's on cut on the bias, it just falls quite straight. It doesn't stand out. I'm glad you liked it. What do you all think of it? I think the dress itself is a real statement dress, but I think the construction technique you can apply to lots of different styles. So even if it's a bit too 1930s slinky bias silk for you, I think you can use the same method. But so far all of you seem to love it, so I'm glad you like it. So we had the first indication here at the waist with the 2 little triangles, but something interesting is going on. But it becomes even more interesting. Can you see? I'm going to zoom in even more. So you got the, you got the triangles here, and then a bit further down, suddenly the fabric comes from the back, and you've got a nice right angle. And then if you zoom out, you've got suddenly lots of volume happening. So above this seam line, it's really beautiful, it's fitted, it's flat, and then underneath suddenly you got lots of volume. So we got a seam here, but suddenly all this volume appears, and again that gives you a really good indication that one of the fabrics will be a right angle, but the center bit is probably not this shape to begin with. So it's probably much more out, and it gets pushed down. And actually I've cut this out in fabric, just to little ones, just to show you what I think it might be like. And I'd be really interested if you all agree with me that it looks this way. Because I know Vionnet loves quatrains, so I knew that was my thinking. I'm not going to look at the back. Let's have a look at the whole view to begin with. So you can see the back has got the straps again, but then she's twisted that. And I actually think it's because the whole dress is probably because it's cut on the bias, she loves draping, so it wouldn't be cut with lots of shaping or corseting or darts. Instead, she tightens it by twisting it round. So by creating these gathers here, the dress becomes tighter and tighter, and it creates the same effect as darts, but in a much more looser, fluid way. So it's she's very much looking at what the fabric can do. So rather than cutting it up, she looks at how else you can manipulate it to make it fitted. So it looks like this, and of course that means this part is quite hard to flat pattern cut. You can do it, and you could just do a fitted dress with a twist. And I actually would do it because I think it'd be beautiful to recreate it by draping, but it's done very much for that figure. So if your figure isn't a 1930s mannequin figure, then sometimes it's actually faster to flat pattern cutting and then add some of the details. So it might not be as authentic, but they will work for you. We talked about it quite a lot yesterday on Patreon, because it's the same as this Go Day dress. If you do it authentically, it's a rectangle, but means it has no fitting. If you do it for flat pattern cutting, you can make it fit yourself and your individual figure. So I think it's safer, but you can still add this really beautiful detail. And then it's got a panel coming up from here, and that sort of diamond shape, you can see it looks like this. This diamond shape actually wraps round to the front and becomes this. So I'm gonna just draw the dress, but then just show you how it extends. And then we've got, can you see on this side? So we got the diamond shape which wraps round to the front, and then we got the skirt. But you can see the skirt part also wraps around the front and becomes the bottom triangle, which peeks out at the front. And then the skirt part of the back basically forms a triangle which goes down. And then you can see this panel from the front, so your front sort of waist panel, wraps round to the back and forms another triangle here. It's very clever. And then the bottom panel just looks like this. And again, if I zoom out, you can see, can you see here? So you, right at the center back, we have got, you can see the, I hope you can see it. Let me see if I can get a slightly close up. No, you can't. What I do is it's off the Chicago History Museum, and if you put in Metal and Vionnet, you can get close-ups. You can see this drape on here, this flare, means that because the fabric is so flat there, something happens up here. This cut might not be a triangle, it might just be a slit. And by opening up the slit into a triangle to accommodate that diamond shape, you create again volume down there. So it's all about manipulating your fabric to create volume. So we got one lot of volume there, and we also, where the triangle is here, we got more volume. So it's all out of one piece, but because of the way it's constructed and cut and stuff, the volume is actually quite controlled. So the side panels here, if I go back to the front view, you can see the side panels are really straight. And then you just got lots of volume at the front, and you got these three controlled bursts of volume, one at the center back, and two more on each triangle. So if that's your center back, you can see, so something must happen here so that it's really flat above, and then suddenly happens volume happens. And I'm just going to quickly now show you how the pattern actually continues. So the front, actually the piece looks like that. So that gives an indication already what shape it might be, because that sort of makes you think, oh, that could be either, that looks like a quarter circle, the angles. If I zoom in, can you see that angle looks like, I'm going to move it out of the, sorry, this angle looks like if you have a quarter circle like that or quadrant and you chop the top off. So that's the top chopped off, and then this is your quarter circle. And then the back pieces, and Yolanda, the question whether it's the same volume at the back, I think so. Yes, I think the front and the back are identical pieces and they're just cut in similar and different places. And I'm going to tell you why. So if you quickly just the front, the back comes on to the front. So it looks something like this. And then again, the diamond shape looks like that. So that's this bit. And then the blue is this bit. And then the red goes around the back and looks like that. And that gives us some indication to give us all volume here that this actually wants to force itself open, and it might either be just a slit and look like that, or it might be more of an angle. So I'm really going to draw so it might be like this, or it might actually be like that. And the same with the back, because it goes onto the front. Again, there's something happening. Actually, I'm going to show you what I did earlier. So what I did earlier, I cut out some quarter circles, and then I started playing around with what I can cut off to create the shape. So I'm going to actually show you quickly how I got where I ended up with. So I'm going to get some scissors. Okay, let me just get some stripy fabric so I can show you my thought process. And this is actually how this tricky designs like that, playing around. At the end I'm going to show you, because I played around a bit earlier, so I've reached a solution of what I think it's going to look like. But I wanted to show you how I reached that solution, because I think understanding how stuff works is half the... That's actually, because I don't want to just give you the solution. I rather you understand how I figured it out. So what I did earlier is I thought it was quarter circles. So what I did is I cut out 2 quarter circles, and I wasn't that precise. I literally just cut them out. And I know that's my front, for example, and that's my back. And then you can start, and this is if you've been around Instagram earlier, Catherine from Project Patterns and I on YouTube today. So if you're interested in troweling, head over to YouTube. You've got drafting diaries on trowels or muslins or mock-up. And this is actually what I'm doing now, is troweling. So I'm already working out how the pattern looks like, but it doesn't need to be full size, it doesn't need to be flat pattern cutting, it can be just pieces of fabric. So I know this is my waist, then I know I need to sort of wrap round to the back, and then I need to sort of go in. And this pretty much looks, this slit looks parallel to my waist. And then at first I thought it was just a slit. I thought if I just cut in, but then if it's just a slit, the other side of your slit isn't actually long enough to form the front panel. So, because this side of the slit, the bottom half, becomes the whole front skirt. So I then worked out that this actually needs to be a triangle cutout. So if I do it with scissors, so it needs to look something like this. That's my front, the side. And then my base is cut off. So that's a basic principle, how my front is gonna look. And then if I insert something in here, which is a right angle, what suddenly happens is all my volume gets pushed to the front, and that looks exactly like that dress then. Can you see? So suddenly, but it's in a really horrible polyester fabric, but suddenly you can see this is how my volume is starting to happen. So if it wasn't a silk, it would just drape beautifully. So I knew where was my front, and I think a quarter circle is right. And there's always with a lot of like sort of Balenciaga use quite a lot of half circles, but I think this Vionnet used quite a lot of quarter circles, so I started with that, and I think it makes sense. I think a half circle would be too big, but you could try it out with a half circle, and then it just be a lot more dramatic. You're very welcome, physiotherapy. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I love this sort of, it's like a puzzle, it's like detective work. And this is actually the really fun part of pattern cutting, just quickly trying it out and not having to worry about big pieces of fabric or wasting material, because you can do it in 10-15 minutes and you get the set. It's gonna make everything so much easier. So the front is sorted, that's a quadrant, and then with the back, now it gets slightly tricky. So I know this needs to, my back needs to go round to the front, so it needs to fit into here, and then it needs to be cut. But I need this here to be a right angle. So here I'm cutting up and parallel to the tip of it. On the back, I'm gonna cut at a right angle to my side, on both sides. Actually, I'm gonna draw it so you can first. So you cut at a right angle, and this is where it's sort of, this is where you're now just trying it out. The tricky part later on is getting your measurements right. So I've now got my, I'm going to write front and back, so we know this is my front. I'm going to get a Sharpie out. It's going to mark them all so we actually know. So this is my front, this is my center front, and this is my back here. And I know the side seams go like this. Then this needs to wrap in here, and this line and this line needs to be the same length. So they then go together and they form this triangle at the back. So this is quite, to tell you the truth, I first looked at this dress maybe a week ago and I thought, ooh, that's interesting and clever, but it took me a few sort of, I like to think about pattern cutting at night when I go to sleep, and it took me a few sort of evenings to work out how I think it looked like, and then I did it in fabric and drew it out. Because this needs to be same length and that forms a triangle. And can you see what's happening here now? It doesn't work because this is too short, because now this side of my cut needs to go all the way to the front. So one thing I can do is, again, rather than just having a slit, I can cut it an angle, and I want to have this angle to be the same length as this. So what basically then happens is, I could either just do it to the side. I'm going to do it first, but I don't think that's correct. I'm going to show you why I think it. Well, actually it could be correct. Could work either way. So if I cut it out like that, I can now put these two together like this, and then these two go together, and that's matches perfectly. And now I just have the question is, so this is my center back here, but here it opens up to go around. Where is my back? Here's my back. You can see the skirt opens up to go around the triangle. So I actually, you can either just now cut a slit here. I'm going to show you two options because option one is to go like this. So you cut it like that. So you cut another triangle out, and that would mean it fits perfectly. But can you remember I talked about how you've got a bit of a flare here? And because of that flare, because it sort of what actually happens, it gets pushed a bit. I got what I call a flare. It's like you got like a sort of, you got volume down here at the center back. So I think if I just cut it out like that, I wouldn't have the tension created to force it to create that pleated flare, whatever you want to call it. So I actually think it looks more like this V angle. So it's a closer angle, which means you even want to have a slit, and a slit would work well. Can you see if I do a slit and I open it, I get lots of volume at the center back. So I think a slit is slightly too much, but I think rather than it being a right angle, I think there's a slightly pointier angle, which then gets opened to the 90 degree of the diamond above, and that creates a little bit of volume at the center back. So it is really clever, and Vionnet was famous for cutting in triangles in to create volume. And you can see here it is exactly that that's been slit into, and it creates volume. And I actually, what I did this earlier, but in different fabric. And then what I did is actually a little bit of pattern, a mini mock-up pattern. And what you can do on paper then is that you actually work out, if I'm going to put this aside now, and I hope you can see it well enough. What you basically need to do is you'd start with two quarter circles, which are exactly the same size, but then from the bottom edge you need to make sure these are the same, this length, and then we now know, thanks to our mock-up, we know what angles we have and stuff. Then you just need to make sure this matches exactly this. So if I'm going to write numbers, letters on, so this is A, yeah, then this weirdly is B. So it's slightly mind-boggling, I think. And then this here is C, and that goes to C here, which is this side. And then I've done this is a pointy one, but I'm not 100% sure whether it's pointy or a little triangle. And then this triangle edge is D, and then matches to there. So that's D and D. C is here. B is here, and then A is here. So you can really see how these two, if you think about how a half circle skirt is such a simple skirt which works very well, and this is basically the same. It's a semicircle skirt, but by cutting into it and sort of slotting it together like a puzzle, you suddenly create something on the bias. This is I actually cut this out on fabric and stitch it together so you can see it. Because it's on bias and it has these puzzle pieces, instead of a half circle skirt, the whole thing suddenly becomes this really slinky, clever, straight bias cut skirt where you have different straights, different biases, and rather than it sort of just standing out from your body and sort of draping a bit, it slinks to your body above the hip where you have your cuts. So it's really fitted because it's basically a it's a fitted bias dress above the hip. But below the hip, you suddenly get the same effect as a semi-circle skirt, but the volume moves really cleverly in certain parts. So on the sides, you still got this, it skims your body like a bias cut skirt or like a straight skirt, but you got lots of volume at the front. And then also at the back, you start pulling it, you can see where the volume comes. It comes here, here and in the middle. So I thought this was a really clever skirt. What do you think? Can you imagine making it? I can imagine making it either in a really nice silk like she did. I'm not a specialist at jersey, I'm not very good at it, at stitching it anyway. But I can imagine this actually being really nice in a jersey. I'm glad you liked it, thank you. In the jersey, the corners would be a bit tricky with the overlocker, but if you're good on the overlocker, you could make a really beautiful jersey skirt. And you know how you get this really heavy drapey jersey? I love Japanese jerseys like that, where it's really, I think it might be a viscose, but it's really heavy and beautiful. And this look amazing in a high performance jersey, or sort of even, you know, it's not swimsuit fabric, but that sort of cold, heavy, quite 90s jersey. It looked really nice and matte. And I actually think I'd love to, if any of you made it, I'd love to see it, because you probably be much faster than me. So if you do make it, please do tag me, because I'd love to see it. And I love to see you puzzle it out as well. Maybe you come, because I think depending what I would do with you, because I just started this to quarter circles because it didn't have to fit anybody. But I think if I had to fit somebody, what you would actually do is you have to make sure that this measurement is like your hip measurement to a certain degree, so that it gets quite a little bit tricky. So if you said that's the waist, your true waist, so if you say your hip is, for example, 20 centimeters below, you would make sure that the circumference, I'm going to draw it in, if basically the measurement from here to here, that needs to be the same full width as your hip. And I think that's what I would start this, and that would probably then tell you how big the waist needs to be and so on. The other thing is that you just say, if I want to have a floor length dress, you would cut out of really cheap fabric, cut 2 cut trends which are that length and a bit longer, and then you just put it on yourself and you start doing what Vionnet does. You start cutting into it and working it out. So I think the method is really straightforward, but making it fit a pattern is probably where you have to puzzle it out a bit so it fits your size. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little drafting analysis. Well, I call it analysis, but it's sort of a bit of pattern cutting, but it's more, it's not proper pattern cutting, finished pattern cutting. It's more about working things out, and this would be the first step. And then I would try to either drape it, now I know how it works, or you would try to make it fit your flat pattern, your skirt pattern, so you'd use the measurements. But that's it for me for today. If you want to find out more about Vionnet, There's quite a lot on Instagram at the moment, and there's also 3 tutorials on my Patreon and some draft analysis, and then there's going to be one more Vionnet draft tutorial on my Patreon next week, and I think it's going to be about the bias too. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Thank you so much, Patty. I'm glad you liked it, and thank you so much. Is it MJ and a Pantaquera? Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you make it, I'd love to see it. Thank you, Kelly. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, thank you for joining me. I'm gonna say bye-bye. Thank you, Andrea. Bye-bye. Yolanda, I'd love to see you make it. I'm glad I'm giving you lots of ideas. Yes, I have lots of ideas as well. Just no time. You're very welcome.